Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm actually going to play this time. So, this is Clockwork Empires, a game in early access being developed by Gaslamp Games. My name is Alfred. Every month I take a look at the new stable branch revision, and then ideally I play a few episodes into the experimental branch revisions that come afterwards. For a couple of reasons, I haven't been able to get to this until now, and so this is where we are. There's an experimental revision to the experimental branch released just like less than an hour ago. So now we're up to beta 54C, as you can see up in the top right corner there. So I'm going to start a new game here. Now I've already gone to the trouble of creating a new world, which saves us a bit of time. Bear in mind that takes a few seconds. And now we fire up a new game. So one thing we'll notice here, for those who have played previous revisions in this branch, is that I have the jungle biome unlocked. Typically, if you have not yet had a colony reach 30 people, the jungle biomes will be unavailable for you to colonize, and you will have to build your colony in one of the temperate biome starting locations instead. However, my 30-person colony was actually in the previous revision, 54B, which I actually wiped the save files from that game before starting this one, assuming they would be incompatible. Nonetheless, somewhere there's a file or a counter or like something ticked up, so jungle biomes remain enabled for me. Just something to consider. There are further milestones enabled. You get further loadouts and starting locations once you reach 100 population. That's a very long game. And these are very challenging biomes. So for now, I'm just going to pick, say this one. So we'll note, as I failed to mention in the previous episode, that the loadout is actually determined by the starting location you select. Right, so this one, for instance, I get the standard loadout. This one, I get the Dauntless. The Dauntless loadout. Loadout are best and brightest. So there's no verbose description of what these loadouts mean. I know what they mean from previous revisions, where they actually have the loadout described in the little info box on the left. Apparently, they're not in the interface right now. I imagine they'll be back. I mean, the Clockwork Empires design philosophy has lately been all about letting the player make informed decisions by providing them information. So I am going to go with just a standard expedition loadout here in one of the jungle biomes. And of course, the starting location also gives you details about the status of relations with foreign powers. Right. So I'm at this point the game is generating the actual map and conditions and mineral nodes and that sort of thing. It takes a little while. This can take upwards of a minute, so I'm going to cut the footage and we're going to jump ahead to the start of the game. Right, and here we are. So, I believe that was actually a little bit under a minute. Welcome to the frontier. A lot of generic boilerplate about starting a colony and being a good governor. Here we are. Oh, I'm just going to pause the game for a second. That's a whole lot of deer. Is that a... It's a skull. Okay. No worries. So it looks like this area is teeming with wildlife. So the very first thing I'm going to do, of course, to set up the carpentry. So this is a tropical biome, which means, generally speaking, wood is slightly less available. There's a great abundance of bamboo everywhere. So this is larger than I usually build my carpentries, but I'm building it this size because of the changes introduced into 54B, which is to say I need a whole bunch more workbenches of various types because of the way all the possible building or possible projects have been divided up into different workbenches. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get down a large stockpile. Let's put you here. So it's no longer possible to arbitrarily pick the size of your stockpile. It used to be that you would drag out rectangular stockpile of arbitrary dimensions. Now they're just fixed to. They're just the option is just stamps of fixed sizes, right? There's the large one, and here's a small one. I mean, I guess I could kind of stamp them overlapping. No, I guess they don't even overlap. Well, there you go. How am I doing for supplies? Should probably get started on logging right away. Logging and quarrying. So I refer to the chop trees and mine surface nodes buttons here at the bottom. Oh, actually, I thought there was only bamboo, but I've taken a closer look, actually. So we're going to have a great abundance of wood. This is apparently the junction of a wet, swampy biome and also a drier savanna biome. So I'm getting both bamboo and baobab trees. So yeah, I should be good for wood. That's right. We'll harvest those rocks. I can see by the question marks over these two commoners, these two laborers, that they don't have this question marks means they're workers that have not been assigned to an overseer. So I'm just going to assign them here and here. They actually do nothing until they're in a work crew, and it's the work crews that pick up the various jobs that I queue up. In this case, building the carpentry, chopping trees, and mining rocks. So as the carpentry gets underway, I'm going to need a carpentry workbench or two just to process logs into planks. And then, well, let's take a look at the modules available in the carpentry workshop. So the very first thing you build is the carpentry workbench, which turns logs into planks. But then you need at least one assembly workbench, which produces other workbenches and utility, let's say practical modules. And then you also have the decor workbench, which produces strictly decorative modules, which improve the quality of life and the material quality of the workshops. So bric-a-brac and decorative things like rugs. I don't like that tuft of grass poking up in my stockpile here. Nope, that's not clear terrain. How are we disposed for food? Well, I did see deer run off in every direction, but I don't see any forageables. And by forageables, I mean berries, fungus, grape plants, wild grape plants. There are none of those, so I'd better get started on the... There's a beetle, I guess. I'd better get started on the farm right away. As in the stockpile stamp, we have crop stamps. So a long time ago, crop fields could be of arbitrary dimensions, and now they are of fixed dimensions. The chili pepper plot is this size, whereas the tea plot is of this size. Of course, you can't eat tea. So tea is something I might grow later for trade purposes, but for now, to stabilize the food situation in the colony, I'm going to establish a chili farm. We'll put it right here. Bartholomew Midnight. That's a steampunk name if I ever heard one. He's just digging up those tufts of grass because I've flagged this area to be cleared by clearing the clear terrain stamp down here. Right, nobody farms anything until I assign an overseer to be responsible for it. I can see at a glance the various skills of my overseers, none of whom are very skilled at farming, which they would have been my first choice. I do, however, have duplicate skill sets. So Uriah and Obadiah here, and actually also Mildred down here, all three of them have science as their primary skill. At the most, I'm going to build 2 science-related buildings, so rather than lose access to, say, a naturalist or someone who's good at metalsmithing, I'm going to turn one of my duplicate science specialists into my farming crew. So Obadiah Tingasket, you are now assigned to the cornfield. You've just been made redundant. So, before I can build anything else, I need to wait for the carpentry to be finished. So, okay, let's talk about what happened between Beta 54B and C. It was largely bug fixes. If as you'll see if you skim the patch notes even briefly. There was a particularly annoying scroll bar bug. So if I open up Overseers, I'm scrolling up and down now with my mouse wheel. What would happen in 54B was a bug was introduced where the scroll bar would, if it was anywhere but the topmost position, it would periodically and unpredictably jump down to the bottom position, which made it a giant pain in the ass to click on any Overseers who were kind of in the middle. So that got looked at. Also, some building priorities were changed. So construction now takes priority over... Actually, let me double check that for you. I don't want to misstate the patch notes, but some priorities were juggled. So your colony can continue being productive. But as we wait for that, the carpentry is still not productive. Still waiting on these two very base modules here. Okay, construction assignments will always be prioritized over other work assignments. So other work assignments include things like hauling things, like hauling piles of stacked logs from the logging site to the stockpile, or basically hauling goods back and forth, or like quarrying rocks and things. Those will no longer delay construction. Of course, construction will halt if there are insufficient raw materials, but you will no longer get stuck in that annoying loop where you have like you're waiting for that one crucial module, but it never gets built because you're also busy quarrying rocks and logs and things. What do I have? Okay, I've got enough logs in stock, although I should probably queue up some more. That'll be fine, I think. We can even play this at double speed, I think. Early in the game, just to avoid too much waiting. Alright, I can pause here for a second. So, one of our carpentry workbenches is complete. So, let's look at the products this workbench can produce. Planks, paper, which we will not need until much later for the diplomacy office, mine shorings, which again we don't need yet. We'll use those to keep the mine productive, and the assembly workbench, which we definitely do need. The assembly workbench will produce our functional modules. So I'm going to queue up an assembly workbench here, and we can see that to make one assembly workbench requires 2 logs, which we have more than enough of. When the second workbench completes, I'm going to make planks. I'm going to use it to maintain a steady level of planks in the colony. I should probably clear out this as well. So as far as crops go, chilies are not ideal. I mean, they're a starting crop. You'll have the opportunity to research more labor-efficient crops later on, much later on, when you're able to build a laboratory and then use it to research crop technologies. But for now, chilies are okay. They're a little bit inefficient in that they take a lot of labor for the amount of food you get out of them. But as it stands, I have no choice. I don't have any other source of food. Only what I brought with me. Oh, there's a deer, and let's slow this down a little bit. And the fabled land dragon, similar to the Komodo dragon in real life. In previous revisions, I would have had my soldiers, or in fact anybody capable of wielding a gun, to hunt these creatures and kill them for their meat. As we can see, this Komodo dragon has just wandered into town and made a snack of my stack of bushel of sausages. I'm not happy about that, but I have no means to... Is he shooing them? Nope. I have no means to dissuade them from raiding my stockpile. That's something I can do later when I have a barracks or a naturalist. Naturalists now handle hunting for game, whereas the soldiers you get at a barracks will shoot at pests but not necessarily for hunting purposes. So natural, okay, the difference there is a little bit subtle. Naturals will range out, and one of their specializations is hunting for food, whereas your guards are mainly for defense, so they will defend your crops. So we've got a start on the chili field. Let's queue up some planks here. Oh, I guess I should mention, for those of you who didn't know this before, you can click increase work orders in increments of 1 by clicking up and down, but you can increase them in increments of 10 by holding shift when you left click, plus or minus. Just a handy little... why is nobody... Oh, that's right. So, although I've placed an order for workbenches and planks, nobody has built them or is even working on them because I haven't assigned an overseer here. So, I can take a look at my master overseer list here, or, more conveniently, click on the workshop and pull up a smaller overseer interface here. I don't have anybody who is particularly good at carpentry. So, again, Mr. Double Time here is a science specialist. I have no science facilities, and I've still got a duplicate scientist in Miss Haverlock, I believe. So, Mr. Double Time, you are now in charge of the carpentry. We see he was Uriah Double Time was previously chopping down trees, so he's just going to lug those logs back. Now, this is a pretty big facility for the number of modules that's in here, and the reason I built it this big to begin with is because it's not possible to expand the size of a building after it's complete, but I'm going to want to gradually fill it with more modules, and I can't do that if there's no room inside. Unfortunately, being bigger means it requires more resources to build in the first place. So that's something that might slow down your progression in the early game. Anyway, I've got an assembly workbench in the works. Elnora Pendelbron, in fact, is making it right now. If it's now complete, it goes to the stockpile, at which point a worker from an unoccupied workshop will place it. So I'm going to the interface here, and I'm going to put it right here. So when someone has a chance, they're going to put that workbench there, and I've got a free workbench again. I don't really have anything else for this other basic workbench to make, so I'm just going to say, here we go. So now I have 2 workbenches, both of whom have orders to keep producing planks until I have 10 in the stockpile. This doesn't mean I'll have 20 in the stockpile. It means when I have 9, both of these try to produce a plank. And practically what it means is planks get replenished faster. I see the woodworkers are working into the night. So another thing I'll mention here is that one thing that's been removed from the Overseer interface, there used to be a set of buttons above the time of day indicator, and those were the job filters. There was you could turn on or off certain tasks according to on the basis of work crew. So you could allow a particular work crew to farm or not farm, to haul or not haul, to sort or not sort, that sort of things. And it was like 4 or 5 buttons. Apparently, according to the devs, those buttons didn't see much use, and they were removed. Now the way to stop a crew from working in a workshop is to remove them from that workshop entirely. I guess if I'm interpreting what the devs have written correctly, they removed them because the buttons were so little used, and having the buttons there was just kind of confusing. I kind of miss having the option, but I guess I can see the justification there. So this is a notification that the Colonists, they're concerned that I haven't built any... this is the game telling me I need barracks. It's the colonists telling me they're anxious that I don't have any guards. And yeah, okay, I guess I can see their point of view there. This is reflected, if I click on the colonist button here, I can see the state of mind of my various colonists and how their state of mind is derived from the different influences of their situations. So we hover over Uriah double time again. We can see he is happy. Of the 4 primary emotions, happiness, despair, anger, and fear, he is 58 happy and then 0 despair, anger, and fear. Here we go. And so on. Practically everyone who in your starting colony starts with a quite high happiness, and then gradually the reality of their situation sinks in, and their despair and their anger go up when their food starts to run low. Fear starts to go up when they don't feel sufficiently well guarded. Happiness is definitely going to go down when everybody realizes there are no beds for anyone to sleep in. Anyway, I've got the assembly workbench constructed. I suspect I'm going to want a second assembly bench. But also a decor workbench. So what I'll do is I'll use the assembly workbench to build a decor workbench. I'm going to use my second basic workbench to build a second assembly workbench. That's right. It's just workbenches all the way down. Where will these go? I would like the second assembly workbench to go here, let's say. Then I'm going to want the decor workbench when completed. I may actually want a second decor workbench as well. But for now, one will go here. Now I'm also going to want kitchen facilities and also sleeping facilities for the various workers quite soon. So the various the various carpentry products are being completed. That's fine. So for those of you familiar with previous revisions, you'll note that the tech flow, I guess, teching up is a little bit more elaborate now. It's more infrastructure. You need more workbenches to cover a wider range of potential products. And of course, each of those workbenches requires resources to construct. And a pleasant side effect is that it's easier to queue up multiple projects. When everything was built out of the same workbenches, you would build only as many of these basic workbenches as you needed, and then you'd have to revisit them periodically as things got built to queue up new things, because it's not possible to queue up more than one job on a workbench. When you build a wider variety of workbenches, you can queue up multiple different projects. The trade-off, of course, is that you have to build more workbenches. Right. So I now have... What's going on here? Didn't I queue up a second assembly? Could have sworn I had queued up a second assembly workbench. Well, I'll do that now. Okay, so what I need now is these peppers are largely inedible when they're harvested from the field. They're not pleasant to eat, and people will only eat them when they are very hungry. So they've gone through several stages of starvation. It's more efficient to cook them, which turns an individual bushel of peppers into multiple chilies in this case, or stew, I should say. So let's build a kitchen. Again, I'm going to build it quite larger than usual, or larger than previously, because it's going to need to accommodate a wider variety of different kitchen modules. So this is pretty big. There we go. Let's get a door in here. Fortunately, the basic stone oven is sufficient for most of our needs, and I'll worry about the rest of these later. How am I doing for resources? I'm doing pretty well, actually, for logs and stone. Okay, more workbenches are complete. 13 planks. When I mouse over the kitchen blueprint, it's telling me that to construct this, I'm going to need 13 planks and 6 stone. If I look at my stockpiles here, I've got plenty of stone. I only have 11 planks, and I will never have more than 11 because I've only told my carpentry to maintain a minimum of 10. Whoops. So let's up this. Let's also do this so that the 13 get fulfilled twice as fast. What can I make that would be useful here? Cots. I have no beds for anyone. You know what? I only want 4 for now, but I'm going to spread it over 2 cots. So if it should happen that I ever have 2 people not occupied at the same time, they will be able to produce them twice as fast. So I see the chili harvest came in. I now have 8 bushels of chili is in here. They're not very tasty, and people get angry if you force them to eat raw chilies after a hard day's work. Hopefully the kitchen will get assembled soonish, and then I can start making good nutritious food, although it will still be low quality food, which will make the overseers unhappy, but is good enough for the commoners. That's not ideal because, of course, I only have my population is currently mostly overseers. So another handy thing that's been added in actually 54B is a little bit extra information here in the population button. So you can mouse over the button and it will tell you the distribution of your population between laborers and overseers. And this new indicator, workplace capacity, that's an indication of how many jobs your colony could be handling simultaneously and how many it actually is handling. So this means I've got 3 overseers or 3 work crews that are not currently assigned to anything. If we take a look at the job assignments, these are all my pending jobs. In fact, I've only got the 2. So the reason, you know what, I'll get back to that. But a little further down the population window, we have the breakdown of the specialists. Yeah, it'll just at a glance, you can see how many people are working the mines or are assigned as your military, that sort of thing. It's now late at night, and of course nobody's working, but I have no beds, so they're just standing around gossiping. Now it's influencing their mood, as we can see by the little emotion bubbles popping up over their heads. So I don't know if you were paying attention to the numbers earlier, but their happiness is decreasing, although happiness is still their primary emotion. Their happinesses, all of which used to be around 50, have declined to between, say, ooh, this guy's becoming unhappy quite quickly. Oh, this lady, Elnora. But everyone else's happinesses have declined between, say, 10 to 20%. The function of happiness. Well, if we take a look at the time of day indicator underneath any given overseer, we can see each day divided into 8 segments. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then these represent shifts of the day during which work crews are willing to work. So this 3rd shift in the day, everybody takes off. Nope, sorry, this 4th shift, everybody takes off because it's tea time. If they're sufficiently happy, everyone will work through the 3rd shift of the day, which is the block of time immediately before tea time. But if they're not happy enough, they won't. Same goes for the 2nd last shift of the day, the penultimate shift. See, this is the empty outline of where a happy face would go. And if your crews are very, very happy, they will work late into the night, into sort of early night. If they're not happy enough, then they will also be off during this shift. So a happy colony is a productive colony. And my productive colony is building the kitchen just very, very slowly. So once the kitchen gets built, I'm going to assign some workers there and start processing those chilies. Excuse me. I've got some modules. Some of those modules have been produced, so I've got those a cot in storage and also a box workbench. Which of these? Looks like I have a spare assembly workbench. Well, so I may have produced an extra assembly workshop by accident, but no fear. That the assembly workbench is one of the few modules that can be used in multiple different kinds of buildings, and particularly, specifically, I can use it here in the kitchen. Oh, what happened here? It looks like some of our colonists were attacked by a death worm, which Mildred was able to kill and butcher, and now we have meat going to the stockpile. This is, oh, by the way, this is another thing colonists will do. They will stack like objects. So now this is a stack of 9 raw steak. Only some of which comes from a giant worm. I was talking about the assembly module. Let's go to the kitchen here, and I can actually place the assembly module here. Let's put you here. So buildings take longer to build based on their square footage, or the number of squares they occupy. However, they can never take longer. The maximum amount of time they can take during a day is a third of the day to construct. It's just a whatever hard upper limit that the devs decided to put in there, which is fine. You know, that's already a considerable amount of time during the day. Okay, hang on a second. Many things happening here. I've got a notification that bandits have been sighted, and I've got a notification that we've encountered fish people. It's a handsome fellow in a old-timey diving helmet. I don't know why a fish person would want to wear a diving helmet. Bandits. So this will influence future decisions I make with regards to bandits and bandit policy. Another 2 bandits, which is not a large number. However, I have 0 military. So if I decide to take a hostile attack with them, my colonists will only fight back with their fists and very ineffectively. I can probably put up with a little bit of thievery on the part of 2 bandits because they'll only take a little bit of stuff. So I'm going to click the Cut a Deal button. Right, fish people. Colony also wants to know what my policy will be regarding fish people. To deny they exist, or I can take an aggressive stance. Again, I'm going to take the less aggressive stance in this case because I have no guns or soldiers. I can certainly change that policy later. There we go. Alright, so peace with the bandits. I can buy them off. Again, I have an opportunity to change my mind on this before it's finalized. I'm not going to bother letting the military handle this until I have a military. We'll just put up with a little bit of thievery for now. It shouldn't be too bad. Right, so while the kitchen is underway, I'm going to build the first of my housing so that my colonists will have a place to sleep. Again, I'm considering the number of modules I want to put into this building. Not just cots, which is the obvious choice, but also things like rugs and windows and chairs and cabinets. Everything beyond cots is decorative and will increase the quality of the building, which affects a number of different things. So I'll get to that in a second. All right, those are the dimensions of the building. So this is larger, again, a larger building than I would otherwise have built. So this is where the laborer bunkhouse is going. Let's see. Just for building it, I will, when it's complete, I'll increase the laborer population cap by 2. So I'll be eligible to receive 2 more colonists. As I increase the quality and meet certain milestones related to assembling such a building, I will increase the number of laborers it can accommodate. So I've got some. I will ultimately have 4 cots because that's what I ordered from the carpentry. Some have been built and some have not. When they are eventually built, Just going to stick them in here. So we can take a look at the other modules that I can assemble, or I can place inside the this bunkhouse. Each functional module I put in there reduces its quality by 1. So each cot. So the condition starts at 0, then it's -1, 2, 3, and -4. A building with very low quality will affect the people who work or sleep in there. In the case of sleepers, they will sleep poorly, and this will be reflected in their personality. They'll be unhappy and, not willing to work longer hours. You can increase that quality by putting in these various types of furniture. The ones I don't have in the stockpile, i.e. all of them, are grayed out. If I put a rug in there, it increases the quality by 2. Large clotheslines, small clotheslines, increase the quality by various amounts. And that's something I might consider doing later. My first priority is actually just to have beds so that my colonists won't have to put up with sleeping on the floor of workshops. Right. So in the interest of keeping this a little bit shortish, I'm going to cut this episode off here, and then I'll continue the playthrough with a second episode later on. So that's what the very, very opening of the game feels like for now. We're up to Clockwork Empires Beta 54C. Again, C was released, I don't know, like an hour ago, 2 hours now. So I do these about once a month, as I said earlier. The game is Clockwork Empires, currently in early access, available on Steam, the Humble Store, directly through Gaslamp Games, I believe. My name is Alfred. I'd really like to, I don't know if there's much, if you have, I feel like the reason I do these videos, I like to start a conversation about what people expect out of these sorts of games and maybe the direction of this development. So really, I do welcome comments. If you feel like discussing anything in particular, aspects of how things have changed over time, I'm all ears. I'm happy to read and reply to comments such as they appear. So, that said, thanks for watching this one. I'm going to continue this series, and I hope I'll catch you next episode.